So we're going to be scrutinising a serious one today, so no giggling, boys and girls. Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Martin Scorsese as part of our Oscar series. Let's go. And we're live. Welcome.
Rowan doesn't have a beard anymore, guys.
All right, let's pick this up straight away.
Okay, I think we've
what's
already
going
established that. Yeah,
we came here to do Killers of the Flower Moon, and someone looks like and someone looks like a moon.
Yeah,
a Rowan of Flower Moon over here.
Rowan has shaved 10 years of his looks just by that
Rowan
beard.
it is awful.
He looks so young.
Awfully chilly.
Yeah, I almost adopted you when the camera switched on.
Okay, well, we'll see who the real daddy is in this podcast, right?
Oh, he's already done you, mate.
Rowan, listen, if there's anything in life that I need, it's Rowan to be my daddy, all right? And I think all of the fans listening, I think they'll echo that sentiment, right?
Okay. If that's the consensus. All right.
Yeah.
Guys,
so what is the film we're discussing?
It is a little short made by someone called Martin. He's just graduated from the LA School of New York Film.
Okay.
And it's called Killers of the Flower Moon.
LA School of New York Film.
Okay.
It's just a little ditty. I think it's a TikTok actually, the movie.
It's what it is.
But yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon, it is an epic. And it doesn't feel that epic. I don't know, we're going to get into it, but it doesn't feel as long as it is. It feels long, but it doesn't feel like it's sprawling. I don't know how to describe it.
It is almost pushing it in terms of the length. I mean, we can agree about that. I would actually say it went quicker than it didn't actually feel like 3.5 hours. It felt like 2 hours 40 or something.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's
40
a lot
minutes
of filler,
sort of evaporated some way along the way. Like it had a great sort of rhythm to it. Which
you kind of fall into it. Yeah, it's a bit like a nighttime flight where you just sort of open your eyes and you're like, 4 hours have just gone and we're almost landing. So but obviously we've got the resident Smurf on board to.
Well, in fact, he's not looking very Smurf-like down there.
I rectified that mistake straight away.
What happened last time?
I'm just gonna do everything in post. So I'm gonna make you a deeper shade of blue now.
Well,
make him a little hat to.
I may as well turn this off then.
I'm sure Bodie's got some questions for us.
Okay.
I'd be honoured to answer them. I don't know about Rowan, but I'd be bloody honoured to answer.
I'm just honoured to be here.
Yeah.
To be amongst you two, especially since we've got a new host as well. With that.
Yeah. This is like in Moon, where they replaced the guy on Moon, and this is like a new Rowan 2.0. No beard, haircut. We'll see if his thoughts have changed though.
Yeah, I mean, for the audience on podcasts, we'll have no idea what's going on, but in terms, for the
we're on
YouTube
audio
audience.
now as well.
We're on audio now.
We
We're
are,
on Spotify.
which leads me to we're on Spotify. So if anyone watching this on YouTube wants to check us out on Spotify or the other streaming podcast platforms, do so. We're everywhere.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier, right? You put it on as audio, put your AirPods on or whatever, and carry on with your day. So
exactly.
If anyone who wants to have my voice in their ears, normally I charge for that sort of thing, but this time around it's on the house, guys. Okay, just enjoy.
Okay.
But let's start because this is going on longer than the movie. Actually, can I pause you, Bardi? Rowan, because you've got your computer up. Tell us a little bit about how much, because this is, we mentioned just before the call, this is nominated for a bunch of Oscars for this year.
Loads. It's been nominated for 9. I can run through the list. I've actually just before we were doing this.
Yeah, give us a gist of give us a gist of what. Obviously, Best Picture is why we're here. But what else has it been nominated for?
Yeah, so there's the obvious sort of above the line ones. There's Best Actress, Lily Gladstone. Best Picture, as you just mentioned, which is Martin Scorsese and a few other producers. Yeah. There's Best Supporting Actor, Robert De Niro, who plays William King Hale. And it does a pretty good job. We have Best Director, Martin Scorsese, comes up again. Best Original Score, Robbie Robertson, which we can talk about because I think he added so much to that film.
I agree.
It's brilliant. It's actually one of the highlights.
I 100%
Best cinematography, Rodrigo Prieto, which is debatable. It does a good job, but whatever, we'll talk about that. Editing, is actually another highlight by Thelma Schoonmaker, which is a Scorsese sort of a regular collaborator. Ever since his I think one of his first films back in the 60s. So she's been a dedicated Scorsese editor.
Well, even Prieto has done a few things with Scorsese. He tends to work with.
He tends to like his gang, doesn't he? He's got a little crew going on, his little Hollywood crew, actors obviously. And then we have costume, and then we have production design. So that's a pretty extensive list.
Yeah, it's kind of covering all the sort of core bases.
Yeah, you got above the line, you got above the line, you got below the line, you've got technical, you've got acting,
but I guess obviously our chat today will cover how much it warrants that praise, if we want to call it, in terms of those nominations, and also does it kind of do the best job? But we'll let Bardi lead the way with questions galore.
Well, I was gonna lead in with the music question to begin with. I thought we'd start off something that I think we're all in agreement that it is, it is good. So
not just good, it is fucking amazing.
Of course.
I think it's one of I think it's one of the things that helped the film, helped the length of the film, right? Because the film is inordinately long, but it doesn't feel that long because each scene kind of flows nicely into another scene, and you don't get that emptiness, which a lot of films do. So, but anyway,
exactly. Yeah, well, I agree. It is great. I'm in agreement there. But so it's Robbie Robertson's final film score because he
passed away. Yeah, sadly. Yeah,
in August. Yeah,
R.I.P.
But also, this is also his 11th collaboration with Martin Scorsese as well. Yeah. Working with him since the 80s, from Raging Bull, King of Comedy, and obviously more recent Kills of the Flower Moon and Irishman as well. So as you mentioned earlier, they do like to stick together. He has a gang that he has to work with. But how important do you think music in movies, but specifically in this movie, how well do you think it did? Rome, will start with yourself.
Yeah, I mean that sort of thudding bass that just kind of kept going throughout scene by scene. Yeah. And it had like a bluesy sort of element to it, but it was pretty stripped down blues, right? It's just like a thudding, but it worked for it's a kind of rhythm, right? Then you also have lots of sort of like proto bluesy elements. You have like Blind Willie Johnson, and it kind of fits the whole zeitgeist of that sort of era.
Yeah, I think.
But yeah, so yeah, really good. Not only does it encapsulate the time and the place, but it also kind of has more modern elements, which just kind of it helps you. It helps with the pacing. It ties it together. So yeah, but yeah, Robbie Robertson wasn't he the guitarist for Bob Dylan, I think, and he was also the lead. He was like a guitarist for a band called The Band, in the 70s. Okay. So he's done.
Yeah, he was the lead guitarist for Bob Dylan. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, well, he's got a lot of credentials.
A lot of the good sort of Hollywood guys, they tend to come from. I mean, I was actually going to mention Johnny Greenwood when I was going to answer the question, because obviously I feel like this film has got a few similarities with There Will Be Blood and with The Master, actually, also. I think both films have inspired it quite a bit. The Master, especially because of that De Niro character, you see a lot of The Master, but we're going to get to De Niro. But in terms of the music, yeah, he brings a kind of, and Johnny Greenwood does this too, he brings a kind of, I don't know how to say it, like a kind of madness, but obviously keeps it of the time. It was the thing that, I don't know, surprised me the most. I didn't come into it thinking that there'd be that kind of musical, because the topic, we mentioned with Oppenheimer, how much do we know about that specific topic? We asked about how much do we know about Oppenheimer and that history, and that sort of period of history. I felt like, okay, I'm coming into it knowing quite a bit. This period of history, I know so little. I mean, I came into it kind of learning on the job, right, as I'm watching the movie.
That's partly the value of the film, right? Because not many people do know about the Osage murders.
Yeah. And obviously we have in the background, and the second half of the film it comes into the foreground. But obviously the FBI being formed kind of in front of our eyes. But the music, just that sort of, even as a bed, but then you have obviously some moments where music becomes a big deal. I think so good. I mean, I can 100% see that being a kind of a clear winner in the Oscars, because not only is it listenable, like you could just put it on, Spotify or whatever and chill to it. It's good quality music. But there's a few scenes in the film where it almost turns into like a Werner Herzog movie, I thought, where it's like the car race scene. It's like it's chaos. Like I was watching it thinking like, yeah, this doesn't feel anything like I expected this movie to be. So for me, the music, I'd maybe even say it was one of the best things about the movie. So yeah, rest in peace to that composer. Because
there's also the music adds to the kind of conflict in cultures between the Native Americans, and then you have early jazz. You have these new upcoming, because I think there's a few scenes which use early jazz, because jazz was making that's like swing, just starting about that time in the 20s, right?
And a kind of Native American,
but it's the clash with the more traditional sounds. Yeah,
100%.
But everything feels so natural. Yeah. Everything feels so natural. It doesn't seem like there's a clash as such. Because when you're listening to it, when you're actually in the film, you can't really, you can differentiate. But it's so smooth with it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it wasn't. It's not like a conscious clash for sure, but it kind of builds the notion that there's different cultures at play here a little bit.
Okay. And wait, just to confirm, that has been nominated for an Oscar. The music.
The music has, yeah. So
best original soundtrack, you said, right?
Yeah, best. Okay. I think so far it's the strongest contender. I think it's up there definitely with Oppenheimer, for me. But I definitely think it's a. If it won, I wouldn't be shocked. It wouldn't be a complete wow.
Well, what is nice is that it doesn't. It's obviously not going like Tarantino using like modern day tracks on a historical film, because it's obviously not doing that. But at the same time, it's not just settling with orchestral, traditional. There's like a modern flavor to it.
Well, I mean,
very subtly.
And Scorsese does do that sometimes. So it's interesting that for this film, he's obviously made a conscious decision. Well, clearly together with his music and sound team, he's obviously made a conscious decision to go down this route. In my opinion, he may have obviously seen the value to it. He's obviously tried to blend these sort of Native American sounds and, like you said, this sort of formation of like an Americanized sense of rock. And because, I mean, anyone that knows even a bit about music knows this sort of music is stolen, from other cultures and things like that. So for me, I feel like... I think all of that is. I mean, look, Scorsese's probably the most experienced. I mean, he'll probably be the most experienced person at this Oscars, right? I mean, he's been making movies since back when Rowan had a beard. So he's coming into it with so much, good, strong film knowledge. So they've made a good decision here. But yeah, music-wise, although to answer your question, in a sort of another part, I think it goes to show the value of when these people have long-term collaborators. Yeah, it tends to be in cinema that sort of, I don't know how to say, that kind of harmony grows and grows, right? Now we see it a lot of times. I mean, for example, we mentioned David Fincher last week. Him and Trent Reznor now have worked together for years and years. They just seem to be getting stronger and stronger. Their sort of collaboration seems to be getting smoother. You have people like Cliff Martinez, who ends up working a lot with Refn.
Nicholas Winding Refn, the Danish director.
Yeah, so it seems, obviously, I mean, in this case, obviously unfortunate because he's passed away, but clearly over time they've gotten stronger and stronger. So I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, he's also half Cherokee, I think. So he has Robbie Robertson, not Scorsese.
Oh, really? So he's got his own.
He's got roots. So in a way, it's probably quite a good swan song for him.
Yeah, but interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Well, we did obviously discuss the length of the film, so I think it's very important to get into it a bit deeper.
Yeah, it's a little bit controversial, I think, that length, but
but go on. In terms of the pacing. So Martin Scorsese cited the films Midsommar and Beau is Afraid as influence on on
Oh, really?
Fucking hell!
Wow,
so, Scorsese. You're above that, Scorsese. You're above A24.
Like,
fuck A24.
Yeah. Well, I did not. Interesting. But does he say that himself, or is that like a press release or something?
This is. I mean, I haven't.
I need sources from the horse's mouth, buddy.
Is this a bit like, basically what I'm saying, is this like when Obama does his like end of year best music list, and it's like, it's like, Bashi's on there, and it's like, oh, I don't think Obama listened to this. You know what I mean?
It's just like, a deep fake of Scorsese saying this.
Well, I mean, if he said it, I don't know. No, maybe. That's
interesting. I haven't admittedly seen Midsommar, but Beau's Afraid I thought was paced quite well. I don't like the filmmaking from Ari Aster, a lot of the body horror stuff, and he goes a bit too far, a bit too on the nose. Yeah. But it's interesting though. So was that just in relation to pacing?
Yeah, so he mentioned it with regards to pick. I think it's important, especially when you're going to dedicate 3.5 hours. I think you got to be able to keep that pace on that. Now, for me personally, I thought the film was a bit too long.
Okay.
A bit too.
Did you watch it all in one sitting?
Yes, I watched it once in the cinema, and I watched it recently for obviously for the preparation for this podcast. So I've seen the film twice, and both times I felt, if you could just shave 20 minutes, 25 minutes, keep it under 3 hours, it would have been better.
But it makes you think. But it makes you think. Well, what would you cut then from the film? You surely could cut some stuff, but I think a lot of the scenes were just nice to have. It doesn't need to be bare bones. I don't know. I actually didn't mind the.
I mean, in a way,
what do you think then?
The thing is that, I mean, this has been obviously a topic for a while. There's two things at play here, and one of them is obviously that, I mean, you said you watched it in theaters, and in a cinema, and one of the problems that I have is that they don't do things like intermissions, and actually even some directors themselves don't like having intermissions.
I was just thinking of that because I remember the Lord of the Rings, the last one, right?
Yeah,
and
it had
all of
intermission.
I think had intermissions. Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember for the first two because I don't think I watched those.
No, in fact, it might just be the last one. This is Return of the King.
Yeah.
This is a while ago, but I definitely remember the intermission there.
But in terms of, I mean,
because 3.5 hours is a long time to be sitting in a seat next to strangers.
Well, that's the thing, right? And the thing is, obviously, if you have if you've got like a 3.5 hour, 4 hour opera, it's natural to have an intermission and to have a sort of period of just like rest away from that kind of format. Yeah. But I don't really agree with the sense of can something be cut or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, we're paying to go and watch Scorsese and those people who've presented this film. We're paying to watch their vision, and I would much rather watch a vision that Scorsese's kind of greenlit from A to Z. If he thinks that every scene in it matters, obviously I put value in his decision making there. I would much rather that than read online and be like, oh, the film was cut and then the studio didn't like it and then it's been recut and reshot. Because straight away I'm going into it thinking this is not the pure kind of experience, right? Whether
it's
or
not
not
the end product
that
he wanted, kind of.
Exactly. And obviously, we have to remember, especially with someone like Scorsese, but most directors who've made a feature film, that they've researched the hell out of this. They'll go to sleep, they dream about this film, they wake up in the morning, they're filming it. So it's annoying to feel like this is a kind of half-assed version of it. And if there's any director that you want to go and sit and watch his whole kind of whether it's 3.5 hours, 4 hours, it is someone like Scorsese. Scorsese's been around the block for longer than anyone right now in Hollywood. We're talking in terms of the top tier, right? Yeah. So it's a shame to go into it. In terms of the pacing, though, I think, look, ultimately, I mean, you can even make a slow burner that's 3.5 hours if you have enough subject matter there to keep it flowing. In the case of this, what's interesting is that he's obviously seen this because it comes from a book which I've not read. I didn't even know about this book. I didn't even know about this instance that this had happened, and obviously it's interesting and worth looking into. But he's obviously seen this initial subject matter and thought, we need these two sides of the story because we almost have obviously the sort of, if we can split the film in a kind of fair way, it's kind of pre-FBI and maybe post-FBI because they kind of make an appearance just after halfway.
Well, it's during the development of the
but in terms of us on the screen, we have a moment where the FBI appears. They sort of they almost like introduce themselves, right? They're like, "Hey, we're the FBI," kind of thing. And the movie's kind of split into two. And obviously, Scorsese's vision was that we need that big chunk at the start and that big chunk at the end. And I've read a few reviews where some people kind of feel like maybe the focus kind of is not what the book maybe sets out. But obviously we can get into it because obviously it keeps us locked mostly onto Leonardo DiCaprio's earnest character. But yeah, in terms of the runtime, I mean, listen, most films now are getting streamed. There's not really an excuse. People sit down and they go and watch all of fucking Stranger Things or some bullshit like that. They'll go and watch 10 hours of that. Right? So
that's actually kind of part of the distribution sort of strategy, because I mean, this is an Apple-funded film, or at least partly, right? And although it does have a theatrical release, it's mostly being watched by people on streaming services. In the first time they're watching it, so
you're in the comfort of your own home, right?
For sure, and it's kind of veering that way, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But the film is almost being targeted to those audiences of who like to watch TV shows. So it's not.
Fair enough.
You could almost split this film into like 4-hour installments type thing. So you could argue it's kind of having its cake and eating it, but I think the subject matter and Scorsese's sort of artistic license, it needs to be this long. I don't have a problem with it being this long.
And also a lot of these kind of new wave of action sort of superhero movies and stuff like that, they'll breach 3 hours easily, right? But for some reason, if it's about Iron Man, then people will be like, oh, it's fine, right? I'll sit and watch 3 hours plus. So it didn't bother me at all. I think the cinema intermission thing, it'd be nice, just, I mean, purely on the sake of so that my, arse doesn't, collapse sitting for 4 hours. But otherwise, I don't have a problem. I think so long as the director, if anyone's got the balls to edit together 3.5 hours and put it out in cinema, it's Scorsese, so I've got no problems with that.
Hey, well,
agreed.
I mean, hey, as long as you two are happy, that's
a unanimous. That's unanimous yes from us.
Well, that was a good episode, guys.
Well, guys, thank you very much, and don't forget
to the problems of the world.
Tune in next year.
Right, let's run through the next question. Actually, we are going to discuss now, obviously, the best actress.
Ooh,
so,
okay.
Lily Gladstone. So,
is she the best actress
in the whole world?
Yeah,
ever made
in the Osage community?
Well, definitely there, because
what?
I don't know. Because the population.
There's not many of them.
We're gagging for this question. You're like anti-Paxman. We don't know what's going on here.
Well, let me just give you a bit of details. So Lily Gladstone was in the process of registering for a data analytics course. So she was going to give up on acting altogether.
Oh, so she was already an actress.
She was already an actress, but didn't
work out.
Make it. Didn't work out. She was in the process of entering her credit card information to sign up to this course when she got a Gmail notification requesting a Zoom meeting with Martin Scorsese.
Wow.
Okay. So imagine that, where you go from, effectively giving up on your whole career. You're giving up as an actress. And then you get an email from Martin Scorsese, and apparently she didn't even have to audition. He already had her in mind to play this character. There wasn't an audition as such. So she went from data analytics to Oscar nominee for Best Actress. Now, I think she stole the show, personally. I thought she was great in it. Okay. I really liked her character. I really liked it. What do you guys think? Let's Rowan begin again. What do you think of Lily?
Yeah, I think she's good. I think the character itself is obviously going on a decline, just because of her illness, because the Osage had kind of inflicted with illnesses. So she has diabetes, right? Yeah. Type 2 or type 3 or type 1. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Do we have a doctor on the show we can consult?
Type Osage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe.
I'm not too sure what type. I'm not sure what
type. But anyway,
it is. But
her character is kind of has to loosen in a way. So at the beginning, she's quite stubborn. You get a stubborn feeling and reserved, not completely, but then she kind of just sort of derails and becomes more of a fragile, sort of bedridden person. And I think she did that really well. And she has kind of a reserve to, and a kind of a stoniness to her, which really works. So I think she does a really good job. But I'm not going to say she necessarily. I want to wait until we see the other films and then judge. I'm not gonna say she's like blown out of the park or whatever, hit out. I don't know. I just want to wait until I see the other ones. But it's not bad.
So Rowan saying no to someone who's native and a woman. Thanks, Rowan. Dennis, let's go on to you. I thought.
What's the Daily Mail headline going to be tomorrow?
Wow,
Rowan slams Native Americans.
Slams with his new look. New Rowan. It's completely.
It's my new SS look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Daily Storm.
But in terms of, the little kind of fact that you gave about she was about to quit and about to send the email and so on, I don't know. I can't speak to that. It happens a lot in acting, because acting is very much all of the film industry. Rowan and I, we're still waiting, but it's all a big break kind of industry, right? You just kind of wait for that moment that somebody will suddenly be like, oh, do you want to be in this movie or whatever, right? So obviously Rowan saved his bait. He's thinking, look, can this new Rowan make it? Like, what can we do here? In terms of but in terms of her performance, it's good, no doubt, and it's she helps drive that kind of the kind of mood, because in a way she's kind of tasked, it seems like, with being like the anti-Ernest, right? She goes deeper and deeper into her kind of Native Americanness, and obviously there's the sense in the beginning of the movie, there's this immediate conflict of sort of Native American and the kind of new world American, right? Or white American, as they're called in the movies, and she does it well. Yeah, I'll just carry on from saying that we can compare it a little bit to last week, because obviously last week we had a lot of praise for Anatomy of a Fall and for that lead, because
it's going to be a tough one between the two, right?
And it's always hard to compare, right? It's apples and pears a little bit sometimes, because they're kind of doing, it's effectively the same job in that they're both acting, but it's a different role and sort of, different aspects to it. There's obviously a kind of great elegance of the fact that she does have Native American origins, and the fact that she's kind of, she's bringing a character to it that not everyone can bring in. There's obviously some context to it, but it is good. It is good, and I can see it winning, and I don't think it would be necessarily a bad thing. I would say she's definitely up there, but I don't know, because I have some problem with some of the performances, which I'm going to get into afterwards. Lily Gladstone isn't one of the issues that I have with it. I think she's probably one of the better things about the movie, but I also think that the movie, I think Rowan was right, she kind of drops a little bit out as we get further into the film, and she's maybe given less to do, and maybe for that reason she kind of maybe suffers from that, because she's very low-key actress, right? She's acting up against these kind of Robert De Niro's and Leonardo DiCaprio, which these guys, they will always bring their presence onto the screen, for better or for worse.
And also her character is incredibly laconic, right? She doesn't talk much, so she has to communicate
very
with her
much so. And that's even established beforehand. Speaking. Like, even before we kind of meet her, there's a sense De Niro's character tells Ernest, is like, look, be careful, they don't talk, they'll just let you fill the sort of vacuum with your bullshit, right? And she's the perfect kind of personification of that. So
DiCaprio is obviously a bit of a fucking, what do they call that, tattletale that he just wants to speak his way out of problems, sort of thing.
He's very if there's one thing he's good at, he's got this kind of rattiness. I can't really describe. He's got a kind of charismatic rattiness,
which
I can see that Scorsese's good at using. He kind of
really brings
discovers
it
with The Departed,
with his teeth. Like
He
kind of like borders on being, could he be attractive? But he's also a fucking guy who would literally just steal sort of dime
he's
from
got
your pocket or something.
But that's sort of my Lily Gladstone.
Could we dwell on performances, or shall we stick to the questions?
Right. So, what did we think of Lily Gladstone's co-stars? So we have obviously DiCaprio, and we have the GOAT De Niro as well. Personally, I don't think it's their best performance, but they did an okay job. I don't think they deserve to win anything. But what did you guys think of their performances? Dennis, start us off.
I think a part of the problem. I mean, you just said it yourself. The whole kind of goat De Niro thing. I mean, he's obviously a Hollywood legend. There's no doubt about that.
He's not a fucking goat. That's what we're.
Well, he is. He is a goat. Yeah, he is a goat.
I think
I'm a novice. I know. Trust me.
I think what's interesting.
That's
with
exactly
this,
the thing a novice would say.
I think what's interesting with this is that I think Scorsese's. I think this is the only point where I'm not too sure about this, because we mentioned collaborators earlier, and I know that when it comes to marketing, people, they go mad for the whole, it's Scorsese and DiCaprio again, it's Scorsese and De Niro again. Obviously, that's a seller, right? A lot of people kind of push that kind of, you see it, the same producer as this and the same director as this. I think personally, on a kind of, if we're talking purely in cinema terms, Lily Gladstone is proof that you don't necessarily need these kind of very super big names unless they really are going to bring something to the role. For example, I can see exactly what he's obviously asking of DiCaprio, and I can see what he's asking of De Niro. But in my opinion, I don't think either of them really. I don't think they deliver the goods, because the reason why I'll say that is because if you look at the De Niro character, is he the one that's nominated for an Oscar, Rowan? Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So he's got supporting actor.
Yeah, and it's a strong performance. The only thing that I'll say is that I mentioned The Master earlier. I don't know. Have you seen The Master, Bardi, the movie?
No,
that's the P.T. Anderson film with Joaquin Phoenix.
P.T. Anderson, so it's kind of Philip referencing. Yeah, and I was gonna say Philip Seymour Hoffman plays kind of indirectly, but he plays the founder of, I guess, Scientology.
L. Ron Hubbard, right?
Yeah, but obviously in the movie, that's kind of, the details have changed, but very clearly a reference to L. Ron Hubbard. But he's able to kind of, he captures not only the audience, but obviously within the realm of the film, he sort of captures these people, lures them into his kind of cult of personality. He does it so well. And I can see that obviously with De Niro's character, they're almost angling for that, right? He has to be this kind of charismatic, he's almost like a bit of a middleman, right? When he meets his uncle, he realizes, his uncle not only speaks the Osage language, but he's able to kind of be the kind of bridge between these two people.
Yeah, he's totally ingratiating himself with that community.
Yeah.
Taking photos and producing alibis and all that shit. Yeah,
exactly. But for me,
and forces him to call him king as well.
It felt, But for me,
slaps him on the ass with a fucking paddle in some big Twin Peaksy fucking.
But that scene for me was very The Master. It made me think immediately of The Master and a little bit of There Will Be Blood, because obviously in There Will Be Blood there's a great scene where he slaps Plainview, in the church. But and actually that's a scene that I think is worth talking a little bit about. But in terms of performance, DiCaprio for me has the same issue where I feel like that character needs a little bit more of a, I don't know, it needs just a bit more of a delicate approach. And with DiCaprio, I felt like we were watching a bit of the best of. Like, for example, there's a scene where he gets told that one of his children has died, and the FBI agent informs him. The FBI agent's obviously a bit unsure which child it is.
Is this when he's in the prison at the end?
Yeah,
and he's in the prison, and he almost kind of just lifts a scene from Inception, where he's like grabbing the bars and he does the whole note. And for me, it felt like I was like, this didn't feel like your character at the start of this movie. To me, it didn't feel like there was a consistent, and I think sometimes that tends to happen. It could be maybe my own sort of placement of these people, but it feels a bit like no matter what the depths of the character is, this actor will think there's got to be a bit of DiCaprio here, right? I've got to show a bit of the smash hits. De Niro for me does the same. He starts off the movie well, I think strongly, and I kind of grow to be sort of fond of him in a kind of, he's got an allure in a sort of strange way. But by the end of it, I was like, oh, I'm just watching De Niro, right? He just ends up being a bit like a mobster, right? By the end, he's no different from most of the mobsters that he's played early on. And in a way, I can understand it from a sort of FBI mobster dynamic, but it's just annoying that we watch someone who's, there's so much potential in this character, and it felt like, I don't know, it wasn't lived out. Whereas Lily Gladstone, her consistency, I think, is quite stay put. Okay, what I'm talking, her consistency is key, I think, which the two leads don't necessarily have. But we'll see what Rowan thinks.
Yeah, there's that kind of tightrope between the actual character itself and all the studying they do into that character, and then also embracing their persona, right? Because you get that, especially at the beginning with DiCaprio, you get him like sort of off the train, picking fights with people, and then sort of smart talking people, and you kind of feel like that's just DiCaprio playing himself a little bit. So
he's almost too DiCaprio. Yeah, almost a bit too DiCaprio. Like, I agree with that.
But the thing is, he's got this massive persona just hanging over him the whole time. But yeah, I think that's a good point, because Lily Gladstone, do we know her from many other things? Right, she doesn't have that. She doesn't have that persona, so it's kind of fresh seeing it.
Although I will make. Sorry, Ron. I just want to say though, a kind of counterpoint to not go into the sort of slippery slope of just saying, "Oh, we should just only hire new people," because I do think there are instances where the sort of persona being built in is important to that character, and obviously there's a few instances where De Niro himself has done that successfully with Scorsese, or you have a bit more outlandish examples, like for example Christian Bale in American Psycho. He's almost Christian Bale is important to that role because he brings that kind of obviously exaggerated, but kind of arrogance of his own kind of persona into the role. Sometimes it's warranted. I just mean that in this case, because the story is so overarching, it's the reason why it's something like, the Daniel Plainview character in There Will Be Blood is so much more revered, because he completely embodies Daniel Plainview, whereas here it feels more and more as if we're watching the sort of the beginnings of Robert De Niro, right? It's like he just becomes so De Niro by the end of that movie. There was a point where I was like, I sort of forgot exactly what his role in the whole thing was, because I was like, oh, he's just Goodfellas now. Like I was surprised he's not going to pop a guy.
I wouldn't go that far, but I do think, because at the beginning we don't know if he's necessarily as bad as he turns out to be. So there's a bit more nuance. But he does play this kind of Monopoly man, sort of Mr. Monopoly type sort of baron, sort of kind of like a sort of crooked sort of mob boss type thing.
It's just like he comes in like a like a viscount or something. He's swaggering around a bit. Like
there's a lot of pretense to the guy.
He has all the sort of swagger of if people who've watched, or even something like Django Unchained, but sort of earlier kind of slave era movies, they'll always have the kind of head of the household, type.
Yeah.
And they'll often also be referred to names like Doctor, or in this case he calls himself King, right?
King, call me King.
And he does come in with that, but it's interesting. Maybe if his character was in a kind of Tarantino, Django Unchained, almost cameo type role, it maybe would have been a stroke of brilliance. But in this, the longer it goes on, the sort of De Niro-ness unravels a little bit, I think.
See, I wouldn't have cast De Niro or DiCaprio into it. I don't. The reason why, obviously, it's obviously a true story that they're portraying, and it's not the case that they don't look like the characters. I don't give a shit about that. But De Niro's character, William Hale, at the time when this was happening, he was about age 45. So De Niro's 80 years old. DiCaprio was in his late 20s, and he's 48 years old. So I don't understand what the choice, because he's very, very particular, Scorsese, with regards to the script, even working with what's his name? Is it Noam Chomsky?
Noam Chomsky.
Yeah. How does he relate?
Well, he worked with him, developed the script with Noam Chomsky, who was heavily inspired by the Navajo and Minion alphabets as well.
Navajo, you mean?
Navajo, yeah.
Sorry, apologies.
Navajo. Yeah. Who's a posh one now?
Yeah.
This is worse than
taking over their land.
He also wrote Pimp as well.
They do this great new burger at Nando's. It's called the Navajo. The Navajo burger. Okay, now. What, they don't have Native Americans in Kosovo, where you're from?
You fool. All right. I'm a mug. Definite. But he's very particular to make sure that all the transcripts and everything were translated, correctly. But
so hold on, sorry, I'm one second. I'm losing track of you a little bit because I got into that joke. So hold on, Noam Chomsky. We're talking about the sort of author, theorist type of person. Noam Chomsky. You're talking about that Noam Chomsky. Yeah. He helped Scorsese
develop
to
develop the script. To develop the script.
Okay.
Because apparently
you mean to help adapt it from the book by David Grann, right? Or is this okay?
Correct. So apparently,
how much experience does Noam Chomsky have in screenwriting? Though
I just was about to.
That's a rhetorical open
either
question.
that or Navajo, or Navajo languages.
So the language that's spoken by the Osage, in their tongue, has no direct translatable written alternative. So Martin Scorsese developed the script with Noam Chomsky, who was heavily inspired by, what was it, Navajo, and Navajo, and Minion Alphabet.
Good enough.
So. But the thing is,
I think we have one Navajo listener, so he'll be.
Well, big up to them. But he's very meticulous in terms of making sure that it gets, the portrayal is correct, everything is as accurate as it can be. But he cast two actors who are effectively way too old to play the people
It's got to sell the movie, baby.
Well,
it's a 200 million budget film, and they actually lost money. So imagine if they cast some unknowns. It would have flopped.
Maybe, but I think you don't think that. I don't know. I couldn't recommend anyone.
It's an interesting point because obviously you have the realism he's trying to get at. He's trying to get embracing realism of the Osage and making it as.
But I'm pretty sure there's actors out there that could have definitely taken over those roles.
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of that, Rowan, I mean, I cannot. If it's between, let's say, De Niro and another 80-year-old, then obviously De Niro is the pool, right? But first of all, it's Scorsese. I mean, which actor is? Short of them just not being available, which actor's going to say no? I didn't know. Although there are a few lines in it which I think are a little bit telling of the fact that obviously Dinner is a lot older than maybe. Well, obviously you're revealing now that he's supposed to be younger in the book.
Yeah, but age 45 roughly, so when the killing started taking place.
They're effectively both double their ages in the movie, I guess. So if one's supposed to be in 20s or one's 40s.
Although this was in the 20s, they probably both had syphilis and fucking awful nutrition and shit.
Yeah, no teeth and so on, yeah. But the thing is, because I'm trying to sort of create a kind of parallel. In terms of the translating it, I mean, that part of it is, I mean, that's almost a topic in and of itself, right? Translating. I mean, we see Native American history with regard to sort of contemporary America is obviously so troubled for so many reasons. So, in terms of translating that, that's a hard one to kind of dig into, right? I feel like someone could create a whole podcast series just talking about Native American relationships and languages and so on. But obviously, I respect the dedication. On the age thing, that is disappointing because I feel like
but the only reason I mentioned the translating the script it's just because obviously Scorsese dedicated himself to make sure that everything was as accurate as possible, and then he does that with a casting.
He needs his boys with him. He doesn't feel comfortable if he doesn't have his boys.
You're telling me there's no actors out there, two actors age range, let's say 30 to 50, that could have taken on these roles.
There are, but you know what the thing is? The problem is that
Rowan, you could have done a better job.
When it comes to the studio, when it comes to the studio exec and the marketing budget, for them to say, another film with DiCaprio, because bear in mind, this is Apple TV, right? This is Apple's chance to come into sort of big time cinema and say, we've got De Niro, we've got DiCaprio. Let's not forget De Niro and even Scorsese. Obviously, they're age wise, a bit older, right? So they might perceive this as being sort of a few maybe movies that they're going to work on. So I understand it, but at the same time, I said earlier I wasn't a huge fan of their casting. So I don't know. I guess I just have to echo what I said the last time around. But it would have been nice to see someone who takes on that role and gets their teeth 100% into it, because it is such a sort of complex story, and the ramifications of it obviously are quite interesting. So
can I? This is from a personal opinion with regards to one of the scenes in the film. I don't know if you guys can, obviously, as cinema kings that you two are. Boffins. There's when Anna dies, her sister, and they're walking down the track, and DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone are sort of in arms, and they're walking down to go and see Molly's sister Anna, who's been murdered.
Is this in the woods?
The woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone's looking at them, and they kind of.
And everyone's looking at them, and as they're turning around, and they're all kind of. I thought that was a shit scene.
What?
Honestly,
I disagree. I quite like the realism of that.
Is it though?
That shot kind of stayed in my memory, whether it was good or bad. But I think it was quite well crafted.
It annoyed me. And especially the scene that follows up afterwards, which I mean, we spoke about in Anatomy of a Fall, but this is the 1920s, so maybe mental health wasn't as important as it is now. But when she's asked to identify the body, and it's just laying there, sort of butchered, and the guy's like, "Is that like?" Answer me. Is that your sister? Yeah. Is that her eyeball there? Yeah. Take it. Put that in your pocket. Go. It's like it just seemed a bit too raw. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, Dennis. What's your thought? Because for me, that scene was just a bit. I was, especially when they're walking down and everyone's just like, it just seemed a bit too. For me, it seemed a bit fake.
I can completely get where you're coming from, and I can sort of I understand. It's two sides of it. I can understand exactly why he's obviously done it. I mean, the reasons are pretty basic, obviously, because you've got a moment now where in this scene, Lily Gladstone, she's at the center of this firestorm. She's obviously so close to Hale, and obviously ends up marrying Ernest. So it's kind of the moment where, for her, her eyes are obviously open to the fact that, okay, what's going on here in terms of the killings is obviously there's a burgeoning kind of conspiracy, and she's sort of become aware, and obviously this one sort of hits the hardest. At the same time, I completely agree that scene kind of plays out. It feels a bit almost as like it doesn't belong completely in the movie. I kind of get what you mean. It's almost a bit melodramatic, right?
Could have been cut another 2 minutes off the film straight away.
You know what?
There's one bit.
Talking of weird shots, right? There is another weird shot which seems completely out of place, and you probably won't remember because it's there's this weird crane shot as
is it over the cows?
Over the fucking cows. As King is about to sell the cattle.
Ron, I could not.
And then it's like some sort of big
that.
swinging crane shot mixed with CGI. It's like, come on, what the fuck? What kind of movie are we making?
That's when I saw that clip, it took me like it was like a kind of hyper real moment where I looked at it.
It was like a sky cam, like watching a rugby match or some shit.
It was like an advert selling like Tenerife to me or something. I was like, what is this scene?
It is very weird.
You know what?
Very weird shot selection.
Yeah. I was actually gonna say, because just to go back, Bardi, to your scene in that actual moment because we've got almost, I think it might even be like a steady camera. She sort of walks through. Everyone does that kind of melodramatic look back. Yeah, it's a bit hokey. I agree with you, but when we get to the actual body, I do love. There's these like 2 or 3 shots of just different parts of the body that they're on screen in total for about 1.5 seconds. Those scenes I really like because those scenes, any good editor knows when it's time to kind of pick up the pace again, right? Obviously, that scene of her walking through has been brought into the editing suite, and then we have these 2 quick shots. We keep it moving. I did like the latter end of it, but I agree that moment before is a bit melodramatic. But even the scene that Rowan mentioned with the cows, I made a note of that. As soon as I saw it, I repeated it for a few seconds. And it's such a bizarre scene because it looks more like, I thought it was going to be like a country and western music video was about to start, or something like that. And like you said, there's like a bit of a strange kind of CGI'd cows, and on top of that, the scene isn't even that
CGI cows. How much does a cow cost to put in a fucking film, man?
Yeah, like 200 million budget, and you've got to like draw in a little cow.
Yeah, but animal rights, guys, we can't be exploiting them. Come on.
But also, it was even stranger to me because that scene ends up being kind of unimportant, right? Like he could have just had a reverse shot of a cow and be like, I'm selling the cows, right? What is the sweeping scene?
Yeah, I think they wanted to build the backstory of King Hale being a cattle rancher. That's how he actually made his money. So maybe they were just wanting to build that.
Well, just the beginning of the film, it shows him how huge.
Yeah, he's obviously got a big
farm is.
Yeah.
But he also says one of the first lines he says is, "I got rich. I'm not an oil man. I got rich from cattle." So I guess there's that relationship, but I noted that, and I actually thought, I was like, I think Rowan will have spotted this scene as well when I made the note, and
Just on the comment of CGI as well. The opening scene, it kind of started the movie off in a bad way for me, just because of the over and useless use of CGI.
Yeah,
it wasn't necessarily needed. Just seeing just landscaping it and in CGI, just creating the landscape and just
the thing is, what's interesting is that because I'm guessing, are you talking about when they're out and they're dancing in the field and there's the scene where the oil bursts? Are we talking about that scene?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, that scene saved it a bit. I was like, okay, this is a better film. But the scene before that, and then sort of peppered throughout the film, you do get just landscapes and the scenery being CGI'd. I think for really wide shots, it's almost like a fallback. They
Scorsese actually uses a lot, and there's a few directors who kind of slip in, and I think something like Wolf of Wall Street has hundreds of CGI scenes.
Interestingly, I wouldn't have picked it up in Wolf of Wall Street. It seemed quite obvious.
No, exactly. Yeah,
and with a $200 million budget, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the Wolf of Wall Street is heavy CGI. I remember watching a video on it.
It doesn't detract from it the viewability of the film though. I was never like, oh, that's CGI.
Well, I think there's a lot of
because it was set in the 20s and I'm expecting realism. The CGI was a bit unpalatable,
Yeah, I actually somewhat agree with that, and I don't know how much of that was obviously limitations in terms of, I don't know, either financial or time.
But it surely is not. It surely is not. You can make this
200 million.
landscapes. I mean, this is rural Oklahoma. This isn't a dystopian metropolis type. Or you don't need to create a whole universe.
It's true, but a lot of the time, stuff like that. I mean, if I've watched the making of Wolf of Wall Street, and it's interesting that a lot of the time that CGI is used to add certain details and artifacts to things like horizons, even and details like that. So it could even be the case. And I'm completely. I mean, I could be bullshitting here. I don't know, but if I had to sort of intuit it, I would say that
most likely you are.
It could be the case that after obviously bits of the editing had been done, he may have gone back and maybe retroactively said it would be good to do this and this. But obviously, once you're on the production slate or on the release calendar, right, a lot of the time it's a time issue so much as money, because you can throw millions at it, but if you tell a team that they've only got 3 weeks to get it ready, it tends to be a problem. But
but it's nominated for production, right?
Correct. Yeah, and costume.
Okay. And costume. What do we think? Well, I
was gonna say at least he didn't CGI fucking all the
clothes, their fucking shoelaces.
Yeah, but at least he didn't make the sort of De Niro like 25 years old like in The Irishman. Although I haven't actually honestly seen the film, but I'm just projecting.
Yeah.
So at least he kept the CGI for the landscapes. So all right.
I think sometimes things like that are important. I'm going to do something because we've already done the Past Lives episodes, but there's something that happens in Past Lives which I didn't mention. It annoyed me. I didn't mention it last time. I'd made a note of it, which I'm going to mention in relation to what I think actually the film does well here. Maybe it might partly be because of CGI, but in Past Lives there's a scene where I can't even remember the character's name, but the main girl and the Korean guy, they're Nora and
Sun Hae.
Yeah, they're out.
Sun Kim. Improvised.
Let's stop. Let's not call this turns into. Let's not turn this into a Saturday Night Live sketch. They're out by the pier, right? And then I don't know if you remember this. We can afterwards go and watch it, or one of the boffins can go and check it on YouTube. But they're like sort of chatting, and in the background there's this like 6-7 extras, and they're all basically just static. They look like
all couples,
yeah, all couples, yeah. And you drive through the motorway, and there's like there's like horses on the sort of on the prairie or whatever, and they're all just still. And when you're a kid, you're like, are horses just frozen in time? Like, why are they not moving? And in this, I found the opposite tended to be true. It always is a super lively. Even like the backgrounds and even those scenes where you do like the car races, it seems like there's a lot more effort. I don't know how much of that is CGI, but it makes it feel a lot more alive, right? Because when you're sat through a film for 3+ hours, you can't be taken out of it by shitty backgrounds and extras and thin walls and of houses and things like that. So maybe a lot of that's probably a lot of the logic behind the CGI sort of.
No, but I'll give it props in terms of the CGI for most of it. What wasn't there, it didn't seem obvious, but it was these landscapes, these wide shots, almost cutaways where it seemed obvious, and it was that mismatch. You have the shots sort of in is it Fairfax, the town where it's all the hustle and bustle and everything, and that's sort of choreographed really well. It doesn't seem there's been extras like copy and pasted in the background or anything, you know.
Yeah.
Well, the audience want to know if it's recorded in 35mm because they can't tell, and obviously you two experts can.
Yeah, what do we think?
What do we think? Is
That's
it recorded in 35mm or not?
That's an interesting question. My guess is going to be that it isn't, but I could be completely wrong. It doesn't have that look. And you know what? Just to on the same note,
Brone's googling it. No, you can't cheat. Find out the actual answer.
The audience need to know the truth. Oh no, I looked at this before actually.
But hold on, what's your view? What did you think though? Did you think yes or no before?
But can I just say one thing quickly before Ron answers? The only thing that I'll say is that one thing that I found interesting, and I don't know what you guys thought of it, is there's obviously a few scenes where, and maybe this is why it didn't naturally feel like 35. Although it being Scorsese, most likely it was 35. But the reason why I felt it is because there's some scenes that are filmed like this, like very old footage, or sometimes he'll show someone taking an old photograph, but they felt almost like digitally altered to look old, as opposed to he actually used, an old Super 8 or
I think so, yeah, because obviously
the
there's a
photos
transition
of the
shot.
Osage family for sure. They look like they were just taken from archival.
Right, yeah. So that made me instinctually think it's not. But again, now thinking that because it is Scorsese, I don't know actually. I don't want to say because it could maybe he's died.
It is 35. Yeah.
It is
shot on
35.
the Aricam LT.
Okay.
But actually, it's actually a mixture because he does shoot on the Sony Venice as well, which is literally the bigger brother of the camera I have. So
yeah, so it's a bit of it is digital.
It's a
there.
mix.
Oh.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole film obviously is mixed in. Like I said,
can we make this a regular feature? Because I think the audience want to know for every single film that we watch, is it recorded on 35mm or no? And does it warrant it? Does it need it?
Okay. Well, one thing I'll say quickly is a little kind of aside. I mean, not to do with this movie, but if audiences are interested in different film formats, it's worth watching Danny Boyle's film, his Steve Jobs film, which I think is it just called Jobs, or
Jobs?
Is it called?
Is it with
Steve
Michael
Jobs?
Fassbender?
With Michael Fassbender, because that is interesting as he goes through, obviously, the life of what's his name?
Steve
Jobs. Sorry. It changes. He goes, I think, from like 16 to 35 to digital. It's interesting. And you kind of watch it sort of change through time. Obviously, as he goes through the technologies of the time. But that's just an aside for people.
That's interesting
if they've listened thus far. But Bardi, listen, I've got a shape in my heart, and it fits exactly a little question of yours. Bing.
Ping. Right. Let's see how many more questions we've got going on here.
Because also we need to be conscious because this is a round 2 recording. So
first recording was 35.
So we're over an hour. But there's a lot of fat with this one. We'll have to cut.
Yeah. But just so we don't think, we go for 3 hours or whatever.
I think we should pump some more jokes into this.
Yeah. So a chicken walks into a pub and says, "What the cluck are you guys doing here?"
Also, there's a cameo from Brendan Fraser as well.
We were talking about that when you were talking about that.
Yeah.
Let's ask that. What do you think of his performance? Oscar nominated or not?
So the
for a little
does
cameo.
make a performance. He's not nominated, unfortunately.
He's not nominated, right.
But he does a good job playing this big fat cat city lawyer kind of guy.
I think he does it really well. I like it.
Judi Dench was nominated for an Oscar, and she appeared, I think, for 6 minutes in a movie. So
which film?
When was her scene?
I think it's not in this, obviously, but in
play a cow.
Judi Dench.
Yeah, you did make it sound like it was this film. I was like, oh my god, I've watched this film twice and I've missed her.
She's in Shakespeare in Love for 8 minutes, and she was nominated and won for Shakespeare in Love, and she's in that film for 8 minutes.
But everyone knows Shakespeare in Love was just Harvey Weinstein sort of just jacking off in the back.
Yeah, that is true.
Pulling strings and,
Yeah. I
but she won. Imagine the other nominees for that year who she lost to.
But also,
who lost to her, sorry.
the Juan character in Moonlight also he won for Best Actor, and he's not in Moonlight for that long. I mean, spoiler alert, but obviously he dies pretty relatively early into the movie. But Brendan Fraser, we discussed it off air. It's cool, and it sometimes it's cool. It obviously shows the pull of a director, right? He can just bring a bunch of people into these kind of small roles. But I think actually maybe the more pertinent question here is, what do we think of the ending of the movie? And it's interesting, obviously, Oppenheimer, Anatomy of a Fall, and now this movie end up becoming almost like courtroom dramas, right? And obviously Anatomy of a Fall is almost entirely a courtroom drama, but obviously this escalates, let's say, into a courtroom drama. Oppenheimer obviously has it sort of floating, constantly throughout. But this as well, what do we think of it as? Let's do a little sort of courtroom drama clash.
I mean, it makes you think about like the clash between sort of the mobsters, the oil barons, right, and new money, and new territory, and expansion westwards and shit, and then that coming in conflict with the FBI, sort of a newly formed sort of federal agency, right?
Yeah.
So the historical implications are kind of fun to look at, because obviously King Hale brings this lawyer on sort of last minute, but is pulling as many strings as he can to bring this guy on, right?
Yeah, it's kind of big booming lawyer. When he stands in that scene, it feels like, the whole ground shakes. He gets up like this kind of Godzilla lawyer.
And he's still a big guy in this. I mean, he didn't shed much weight. I mean, between this and the.
I can just imagine that Scorsese was like, keep the weight. Come on board, keep the weight.
But they were recording in the same studio, so he just flicked back and forth between scenes.
But do we think? Because it's interesting that. In as we get to the end, because again, Ron and I discussed it a little bit when you were just off for a little bit, but because it reminds me, obviously we get into that courtroom scene and then we end on this kind of theatre scene. Obviously Scorsese makes Jack White as well. We mentioned obviously has that little cameo.
And Scorsese himself comes on, right?
But
right at the end.
Right at the end.
Yeah,
the last.
But one thing I actually wasn't very satiated by that ending, and it could be sometimes that when you've watched the movie for so long, you want it to kind of end
a bit more climactic.
What would have been an ideal ending for you then? How could it have been made better? It through the eyes of director Dennis.
Listen, it's a true story, right? And a lot of Native Americans to this day suffer from events like that. Obviously, I mean, in terms of pure genocide and everything that went on is obviously disastrous, right? But obviously they
actually, just on that point, they only gained the settlement in 2011. They had basically money owed to them until that time. So
so in terms of the ramification, the true to life. So look, I wouldn't expect Scorsese to end it with a kind of happily ever after. If you make a movie with a topic like this, it's not ever really going to have a happy ending. But I drew parallels to the assassination of Jesse James, because obviously it has that same vibe of, and obviously Jesse James leans into the poetry of it, so much. But with this, the only reason why I said I wasn't satiated is because it sets up almost like the foundations of the FBI, but I don't know, it feels short-lived, because when the FBI come into it, I suddenly realized, I was like, okay, wow, yeah, we're in the 20s. So yeah, Hoover is literally setting up the FBI as we speak, right? It's going on in the background. In Washington, we're setting up the FBI. And obviously it's especially pertinent because it's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And the land that they're on isn't necessarily federal land, right? Because it belongs
land.
It's a reservation belonging to Native Americans. And I feel like by the end, I don't know, that conflict just sort of, it was like a little tablet, it just dissolved in the water. And then obviously we get that kind of ending. I wasn't sure what to make of it. I personally, and obviously we'll score it at the end, but it detracted a little bit.
It's a strange ending, but it might be a comment on sort of the way the tragedy has kind of just been commercialized into like entertainment, into this like I don't know, some cheap.
Well, and it's actually something
because they're recording Foley, they're kind of trivializing a lot of it, right?
Yeah, and it's something that Scorsese's into. I mean, he's shown it obviously with things like King of Comedy and a few other films, so it makes sense that he would somewhat he would somewhat lean into that. But
I mean, the way I saw the ending, so to interject, the way that, because it does obviously, it's 3.5 hours long. It has this whole story of what they went through, and then at the end, Scorsese goes up on stage and explains what happens to those people. The way I understood it as a novice was like he wanted to tell the story of exactly what happened to the Native Americans, and it's like, for the people that actually committed the crime, let's not even give them any time of day. This is what happened to them. It doesn't matter. Let's not forget what actually happened, because it's not about them. It's not about the people, the criminals as such, and what happened to them. It's about the people who were killed.
It kind of is about them. The film is framed around the criminals, which is an interesting choice.
Of course,
right?
But to end it, let's say, give them half an hour of what happens with their lives. It's almost irrelevant. Because no one really wants to know about that. It's more about what they did.
In that perspective,
that's how I saw it. Hey, I'm a novice, guys. Yeah,
you're more than that now.
I'm a Smurf. You've got hours. Yeah, I went from a novice to a Smurf.
But from that perspective, it makes somewhat sense. But again, Rowan's counterpoint, I think, kind of makes it a little bit redundant, because one of the other things that I was going to say actually about the movie is that, and it kind of goes hand in hand with my criticism of both De Niro and DiCaprio, is that the movie becomes so much about them, right? And obviously they're driving almost every single scene, which it frustrated me a bit, because I remember reading beforehand when Lily Gladstone was nominated, a lot of the reviews were like, oh, this is completely her story and she drives and so on. But when you watch it, it's very much the DiCaprio and De Niro show, right? They're at the center of this, and especially De Niro, he opens as a kind of Native American apologist, sort of ambassadorial type, and obviously ends as being this grand conspirator kind of figure. But because the movie focuses so heavily on them, it does fall into, in my opinion, a few kind of tropes, I want to call them. So, for example, a lot of the time, a lot of the Native American scenes, we kind of are sort of left out of what's really going on. Like, we see a few events happen through dreams, which is a lot of movies do this. I've realized a lot of movies that feature Native Americans, they'll do these things like visions,
the owl when they're hallucination, which is just to symbolize
hallucination.
Death. Yeah.
Or
the
like,
what?
For example,
the what was this?
An owl comes through the window.
You know, the mum sees the owl, and then Gladstone's character sees the owl as well. Yeah. Or they'll do this thing.
Ironically, the CGI on the owl was pretty realistic. I don't know what happened with the cows.
Was that CGI though? It looks real.
Oh, good question. Okay, I haven't verified that, but I'm assuming whatever.
But I was going to say that trope is a little bit, I want to say, because I tell you, another movie that does a similar thing is The New World. Obviously, that shows sort of the foundations of America.
It's a Terrence Malick film, right?
Terrence Malick, and it has the same. It might even be a direct reference, but the moments where the mother's dying in Killers of Flower Moon, she kind of opens her eyes and she sees these kind of Native American, but I mean dressed like in the gear. I mean, she's probably imagining sort of past Native Americans. They're in front of her, sort of looking at her, and she blinks and they're gone, sort of thing. But those scenes like that, it made me conscious of the fact that this is being completely led by De Niro and DiCaprio, and then for the end, for him to kind of, I wouldn't even say subvert, 'cause he doesn't necessarily. I mean, this is a brief moment, but for him to go in and sort of retroactively read out these sort of histories, it's nice, but it for me it works when someone like Spike Lee does it. Spike Lee is especially good at doing this thing where he ends his movies, he'll throw in a bunch of information, but it's always been seeded in the movie. So anyone that's watched something like The Five Bloods and more of his recent work, he has this great ending scene, but all the information's been seeded throughout the actual movie. Whereas with this, it feels like there's not enough effort given in the chunk of the movie for it to warrant that ending. That was my take.
And there's plenty of time to do it. I see what you mean. And they were gonna originally shoot it from the FBI's point of view, but then they thought that might be insensitive considering they're just kind of swooping in as white saviors. But it would. I see what you mean in terms of it. They've obviously taken the approach they've taken the sort of anti-hero approach to basically focus on the criminals, which was interesting. But it would have been good to see more of the actual So to me, to see more of the indigenous, like, because the scenes with the indigenous, with the Osage and
Osage,
and De Niro were
Osage.
pretty powerful. They're quite powerful scenes. I quite like that. I wanted to learn more about them. And
100%.
I'm not just saying that. I actually do.
Yeah,
want to know more about.
Me too.
So, but they're fixating on the shenanigans of the local mobsters,
and you're right. The fact
which is probably a fault I'll give to Scorsese. He loves the mobster shit.
But
he loves it. He loves that. He loves it.
I want it to be more of like a. I want it to be more of like a sort of like anthropology. I just want to know more about the culture. You know.
Yeah. Although and the New World, I think for people who haven't seen it, does an interesting take on that. But I was going to say one good thing is that you mentioned it at the very least doesn't fall into white savior kind of territory, which is at least from my reading of it doesn't necessarily. And
although Jesse Plemons is a bit of a savior. I mean, he's a great savior, a savior figure as the FBI agent.
It's true, but there's just enough kind of machismo to him to make it that obviously he's got his own power. I don't know how to say it. Like it's not illustrated because obviously this is true to life, right? And there's only so much you can amend to sort of avoid interfering with history, right? But his character, he isn't set up like this Batman figure. You know, he doesn't appear and like swoop down and solve problem. You know, he kind of starts a bit clumsily, right? It's almost like the FBI finding their feet, right? Where he's like told, like, come back later, and he's like, okay, I'll see you on Friday, and then
for sure.
Come back on Friday.
He's a bit of a fledgling, especially in that territory.
Realize, exactly, and I think the opposite would have been true if that role had been like, I don't know, like this sort of buff, handsome guy, and he comes in, he's like, hey, stop that dude, you know. Then obviously it's playing on the white sort of savior narrative. But I think with this, I think it just gets it right in terms of playing true to the actual story, and obviously not veering into kind of Hollywood dynamics too much.
He's not playing it like Mark Wahlberg in The Departed.
yeah. Which I don't think anyone but Mark Wahlberg can do that, you know.
All right. I think we should finish up relatively soon.
Let's. I mean, I'm done with regards to the question. I think we've hit on every kind of topic. We've got, everything's been answered by you two, so it's all good. Should we begin the reviews?
Okay.
Should we bring the reviews?
Okay.
Yeah.
Who
wants to go first?
I think we established that Bardi goes first, right? And one thing I'll add is I do think it would be interesting. I suggested this a few rounds ago, but maybe we can do it from next week. It would be interesting for you, Bardi, to review the movie at the very start of the podcast, and then maybe give us a...
You've never mentioned that before. Well, you put me on the spot as if I mentioned this.
No, maybe I just said it flippantly, but yeah.
I don't mind doing that, yeah.
Say it. But I think for this time, I think you go first and tell us.
All right, new feature from next episode. I'll review it at the beginning and I'll review it at the end. I'm like a little test dummy. Okay, that's fine. So the rating I'm going to give this is a 6 out of 10.
Whoa, okay.
Oppenheimer's just dropped a bomb. Fucking hell.
Wow. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
That actually hurts me.
Yes.
What have we been teaching you?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, we haven't been doing a good job, have we?
Go on, then it's your turn. I'm not going to...
You're not going to say anything? I'm going to back that up.
I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. You know, it is a long film. You know, I've watched it twice. It's a good story, but I do think that the casting was quite wrong on this occasion. They do a good job. Obviously, he is De Niro. He is a goat. Rowan. Don't listen to what Rowan says. He is a goat, but I don't think he was a goat on this occasion. And it just seemed a bit too long. I think the best thing about it was obviously its visual aspect and the music. The music carries the film, I believe. So I wouldn't watch it again for quite a while. It's a good story, but I'd give it a 6. I'd give it a 6 out of 10 for me.
Same rating as Past Lives for you. Yeah. Just putting it into perspective. But that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I did put a wish if I could change my rating.
I'll give each of us the opportunity to retroactively change.
Because I would change
but
Past
Denton's
Lives
going to
to...
stand by his decisions.
Anything.
If I could change Past Lives, we'll go to like -10.
Okay, I'll go. I think the rhythm of the film, the magic of it, feeling less long as it actually was, as well as building the atmosphere and the zeitgeist and the era, it did really fucking well. And the music isn't undervalued. If I can add a fifth pillar to my 5 tenets or 4 tenets of filmmaking, music, which goes hand in hand with the film's pacing and rhythm, which was fucking good. It had a Godfather feel, and I think the editing by Schoonmaker is a big element of that. All those things considered, I'll give it a 8.5. I think it's fucking good.
8.5. Whoa.
I was literally considering a 9, but I'm not gonna do a 9.
A 9? You really? Wow. Okay. Well, hey, you guys know better than I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna
here we go.
give my review. I've stopped.
We're watching a genius at work.
When I watch these movies, I don't review them anymore on Letterboxd because I'm worried that either of you will see it. So I want to keep it a secret now.
Keep it exclusive.
My actual review. Yeah. What I will say is that I think based on what I've said about the film, I think purely more maybe to do body with your questions, we picked up on a few negatives. I feel like I didn't have the chance to dive into the positives as much as maybe I would have wanted to. Maybe another podcast down the line we can, because I think the film has huge positives. And like I said, Scorsese's, he's obviously he's at an age where unfortunately he's not going to make maybe a lot more films, but he's showing his kind of masterful approach to directing, and obviously he makes a few. Obviously, we mentioned a lot of the mistakes today, but I think the movie has such power behind it. Obviously, the topics are fascinating, and his ability, like Ron said, to edit 3.5+ hours into something that feels like a sort of jumping, dancing kind of almost theater is. Yeah,
the editing is majestic.
I think it's crazy. Really, really so it's so difficult. Anyone that's even tried to edit, a fucking Instagram reel knows that to find beats for 3.5 hours is insane. So my review of it is gonna actually copy Rowan this time around. I was also gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10. I would say that it actually is probably the best that we've seen so far in terms of just an overall,
I would say so as well,
spectacle. Yeah. And I think it's nice watching a director. I felt the same when I watched Tarantino's not his last, but his most recent. Once
Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, there's this kind of there's a brilliance to watching someone who's he's been doing this for a long time and he's coming into it and he kind of knows what he wants, right? It's like dating a mature person versus an immature person. But yeah, the film has so many positives, and I think that it's lacking on a few details. But in a way, those kind of missing details are also very Scorsese. He's the sort of person who he doesn't linger longer than need be, right? He loves to be just driven by the story. And obviously, to me, maybe to get a 10, you have to, almost just dive into the world of that story. But he's someone who's just driven by that plot. So in a way,
are you reading my script? This is my script. I completely agree with you. I completely agree.
No, listen, we've seen
diving into the setting and embracing the setting is would have put it up to a 9.
But listen, and I think
an important aspect.
Yeah, and sometimes because we've worked on various productions together, you have a great kind of, you hold people in a high esteem when they do something that you think, this is not an easy feat, right? And obviously to do that off the back of a tough story to tell, I would say 8.5 out of 10.
I was going into the film sort of wanting to hate it in a way, but then the story.
Also a bit cynical, yeah.
I was cynical to bring up that often used word.
Yeah.
But then I just got transfixed with the story and the pacing and a fucking beautiful thudding bass line. So it wooed me.
All right.
So we'll throw up the scores and we'll see what they aggregate to and how that changes.
Okay.
We'll definitely see it.
What are we doing next week?
What's the next film?
Maestro's next.
Whoa.
So this might be a tough one.
I know nothing about this movie, so I'm going to be interested to see the reaction. But I guess tune in next week, guys, for Maestro. 3
but
Maestros reviewing Maestro.
True. Well, 2.5 Maestros.
Cool.
And everyone subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you listen to podcasts on Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple Music, whatever you're listening to.
Everywhere.
I want everything, and comment as much as you can. Even if it's a small comment, good, bad, let us know how stupid Dennis is.
Let's make a vinyl.
Just put it all on there. Put it on there. We need as much feedback as we can.
Just verbal diarrhea over the whole comment section.
Just go crazy. Even if you guys disagree with us, perfect. At least we'll learn something. But for now, that's what we need. But guys, until next time, huh?
Scrutinize this,
guys. It's been beautiful.
And Rob will have a beard by this time next week.
A little bit. Maybe the goatee.
Gandalf.
Can you do the tash?
Like Pai Mei. Huh?
Grow a little mustache.
Maybe.
Cue the music over this.